Hello, this section is entitled Security, Work with Images Securely. So if you recall, up until now, we primarily have been working with publicly available images, right? Like we were using Ubuntu or Nginx, right? I think we did a quick sidebar into using Amazon's ECR, and we'll come back to that in a bit, but primarily been doing public things. So what we're going to do now is look at sort of the different scenarios for how do you manage images, right? In this case, we've been doing the non-proprietary path, right? So that the actual images themselves are all basically out of the box, right? Which is probably unlikely what you'd be running in a production environment ultimately, but that would be one approach, is just everything is public, right? But more likely, you're going to have some private images that you don't want to publicly share. So in this case, there's sort of two modes, right? One mode is you can create it where you have some that are proprietary, but every cluster user can see the images, right? So the images are maybe secured to your company, but not to the employee. And just for context, the other one would be you want to maybe lock it down more so that these images are not necessarily seen, visible to every user of Kubernetes. Okay, so let's first talk about the visible to all cluster users, right? So the kinds of solutions you can do there is, one is you can use Docker Hub or some other registry, right, that's publicly out there, but you're going to need to somehow provide credentials so that into the system so that you can then access those, right? And we'll talk about that later, right? So that's one approach. You could do an approach where you install your own private registry inside your firewall network, right? And just leave it open. In which case, if you have the URL, then whoever has access to URL can download it, right? And then another one is if you're using a cloud provider like Amazon or Google, right? They provide a mechanism. For example, Amazon has their ECR, Elastic Container Registry, I think it is. And what you do is it basically just, when you set your cluster up, it automatically has access to ECR and it can pull all the images from it, right? So you don't have to do anything special. The cluster itself at the cluster level has access to all those images. Okay, so right, so that's kind of the approaches there, right? And in terms of how to manage those credentials, like in the case of the top one, right? The bottom two, the cloud one and the internal private registry, do not require any credentials because they're essentially either wide open because based on the network, or your cloud has provided a mechanism to get access to those registries with no credentials. Now, if you're using Docker Hub or some other registry, you need to somehow deal with these credentials, right? And there's generally two ways of doing it. One is at the node level. You can log into every one of the nodes, and there's a Docker configuration file, and in there, and it's in the docs, you can go in there and add in the credentials for your private repository, right? And in which case, anybody in your cluster has access to it, right? Or you can use secrets, right, and which we'll cover below, and that when you add those secrets, there's a way that when you're pulling your images, those secrets get used. And that's what we'll be exploring mostly in this video. Now, that's kind of everybody visible. Everybody has visibility to the repository. So if you want to limit access so that only some people in your cluster have access it, you're going to have to use secrets, right? And addition to that, let me talk about that for a second. So what that means is you have to use secrets. And the side note here is if you're using Amazon ECR, I'll remind you that there's no mechanism to limit down to the user. It's just anybody in the cluster has it. So in order to use limited access, you're going to have to go to some other solution other than Amazon ECR, as far as I can tell. One other thing you're going to have to do if you want to be super secure about, if you want to be super secure about these images that you don't want the visibility to, right? You need to basically turn on an emission controller called always pull images, which basically forces at the pod level when it tries to pull down those containers, right? You're basically telling it that you must always pull a fresh copy of the images as opposed to running it from the cache. And the reason why you want that is the scenario is you don't want, if you allowed maybe person A to then pull down an image and cache it, and then the second person comes along and then has it set to pull it from the cache, it will bypass the credential. It doesn't need the credentials. It will grab it from the cache, and now person B, even though they didn't have access to the secret, let's say, they can actually get access to that image, right? So now the thing that's a little bit confusing right now is right now this ability to turn on always pull images emission controller is not available on EKS, right? So that's at least so there's not a great solution of forcing this on EKS right now. It would just be by convention that you would have to instruct everybody to always pull images. Or I think there's a way to write your own custom dynamic emission controller that would do this too. And I bet you if you Google enough, you probably could find that. So bottom of the story, the big key here is we're going to have to use secrets in order to enable our pods to be able to download those container images. Okay, so that's what, before we do that though, we need to get a private image, an image into a private registry, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to use Docker Hub. So I'm going to do this right now, go through an exercise of creating a repository, making it private, and then, and getting the credentials for it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Docker Hub. I'm going to create a repository, and I'm going to call it hello, and I'm going to make it private. And that's it. I think I just hit create. So I've got my repository, right? Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my machine here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove in my tilde Docker, I believe it is. In this folder, in your home folder, there's a Docker file or folder that has like your credentials in it. And I just want a clean set of credentials. So I may have had other credentials to other repositories that I don't want to use right now. I just want to use my Docker Hub one. Excuse me. Okay, actually need to remove the directory. Okay, so now I'm sitting here. I want to log into Docker, so I do Docker login. So you notice that my password for this credentials now, right, are stored in a configuration file called in docker.docker config JSON. That's why I wiped it out in the first place. So right now I have a config JSON that only has the configuration for this particular credentials for this one Docker Hub account. Okay, what am I doing here? Okay, so we logged in. Okay, so I want to build. Oh, I already. Let's see. I already did it. So the command I'm going to run is docker build tag hello like this. Now, what this is actually doing, under the hood, there's a Docker file here. We've seen this before. I basically have a little Python app, right? It's a Hello World app, and it's just basically copying in the app folder into a Flask-based container, right? And it's one of the things that's running is installing all its dependencies. And just for giggles, not that this is important, but if I go into app, there's a main file, which is really the guts of it. It's basically just returns hello world, and the other files have to do with dependencies. Again, that's just a sidebar. So the command I'm going to run is, I've already run it, so I don't want to run it again because I'm not sure what it'll do. Well, it probably can't hurt anything. So it's built an image, right? And then I've tagged it with hello 0.0.0.0.10, right? So if I do kube control, no, this is not kube control, this is Docker container, no, image. Is it image ls? Oh, right. Docker image ls. I actually have my hello, right? And it's 0.1.0, right? Okay. So the next step is, if you look at Docker Hub, the name of this, the name that I want to use for my image locally is going to be this format, like just like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create that tag locally, and then I'm going to push that tag up to Docker Hub, and it'll come up here. Okay, so let's see if we can get this to work. I'm just going to copy and paste here. Okay, so Docker tag, I take the thing I just built, and I tag it with the name that's the same kind of name, but it's local, but it's the same name that I would be using on Docker Hub, right? So now if I look at Docker image ls, I should have one. Let me find it. Let's see, hello. Here's a sock monkey. SCKMKNY hello, right? 0.1.0, right? And then I'm going to do a push. I'm going to take that image locally, and I'm going to push it up to Docker Hub. And this may take a minute, but it's uploading it to. Now, for whatever reason, this I always find it slightly annoying that this particular base image is particularly large. So anyway. And if I go to Docker Hub, you can see now I've got an image of 0.1.0. This is a private, this lock, it's a private repository, right? So, okay, so we got everything set up from the perspective of getting our image like ready to go. Now we got to figure out how to use it, right? Now, if I try to use it right now, in fact, I could do this for exercise. Yeah, let me do this. With no special effort, right? There's something called SA level here, so let's look at this example. I just want to prove that there's a problem that we're trying to solve. I think I've got in this SA level templates, I have an example of, you notice here I actually have a pod. It's referring to that same image, right? And let's see what happens if I try to deploy this one, right? Better not work, because I have not given any credentials anywhere. So if I do helm install dev SA level, we'll come back. We're going to use the same SA level later, but it'll work later because we'll do something special. So if I do kubectl get all, image pull back off, right? It's pretty clear it's got a problem with pulling images. Kube control describe example dev, and it's going to give us errors. It's telling you the state. It's waiting for this, and then it probably in the log here will also say pull access denied, does not exist, may require Docker login. So basically, it doesn't have credentials right now, and it's not going to work. So helm install dev. Okay. So that was just proving that it cannot work until I do something. Okay. Okay, so the next thing is, now this is pretty well documented, exactly documented in an article that's in Kubernetes, right? About pulling an image from a private registry. So I'm going to basically walk through this instead of my own notes, right? So we already did this. We already logged into Docker, right? And I'm not going to cat it because it has credentials in it, but there is a file, I'll ls it. So there is a file ls tilde /.docker. Okay, there's a config file, config.json. In there are my credentials. So if I was to show you that, and you you'd be able to get my password for my Docker account, which I don't want to share. Okay. Okay, so what you can do now, though, is we can create a secret, right, in our cluster that essentially has that configuration file in it. So if you look here, I'm going to just copy and paste, except for this has got the wrong path, but okay, I'll have to fix that. So what directory am I in? Okay, I got it. So I'm going to do kubectl create a secret. Oh, poop, I can't. Okay, well, I'm going to hit this, it's going to fail, and then I'm going to fix it now. Okay, so I'm trying to create a secret called regcred. Then it's from a file, right? And its path needs to be not this. Home SCKMKNY .docker config JSON. Get rid of that bracket. And this is so the point is this is a secret. Now it happens to be a specially typed secret called a Kubernetes IO Docker config JSON. And that, by being that type, one, it'll validate that it has the right fields, and two, it will also be able to be used later. So it's important you have that type. So I do that, and I have a secret. Kubectl, well, I don't want to, anyway, the secret's there. Kubectl get secret. I don't necessarily want to show you the secret, but I'll see that it's there. Here it is right here, okay? So that's what this whole section here is. Boop, 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 inspecting it. They're basically, you can look at it, and basically that secret actually holds your credentials, and it can, it's not, it's base 64 encoded, essentially your password, right? And so enough of that. So we have a secret. Now the question is, how do we use that secret with our pod? And the answer is, let me kind of get rid of this. The answer is, there's an example. So this is the pod level, providing the secret at the pod level. So if I go to pod level and I go to templates, you can see here, this is a regular container, just like I had earlier, a regular pod with a regular container. But then I've provided an image pull secrets, which is another key off of in this, and I'm telling it the name of the secret to use to log into Docker, essentially, to pull down the image. And that refers back to the image, the secret I just created from that file. Okay, so now I can do, with that in place, I should be able to do kubectl, no, not helm, install dev, pod level, and let that run, get all. Okay, you see it's creating the container. Okay, well, it's not dying. It has to download this container, so it's taking a second. Really? Okay, I'm going to pause the video here if it doesn't. I'm going to pause the video for a second. Okay, I'm back. The irony is, the moment I paused the video, it came up running. Okay, so what's going on here? The point is that now, just by providing that secret, it's able to now download and then ultimately run that container, right? And that's the container, that's the Hello World container that came from my private registry, or a private repository in my registry. Okay, let's get rid of this. Helm uninstall dev. Okay, the last step is one pain point here is, right, we had to provide this secret in every one of these pods, right? And that just seems problematic. I mean, just, if you change a name of something, you have to change a bunch of pod settings, right? So the one strategy here is we can change tactics, and let's see, I'll just follow the article here. What you can do, if you think about it, every pod, when it gets run, right, uses a a service account, service account, right? Uses a service account to run in. And then, so in this case, we didn't supply anything special, so it was the default service account that we just ran when we just ran our pod. And what you can do is, instead of associating this secret to the pod, you can associate it to the service account, which then is tied to the pod, so that every time you try to run the pod without a service account, without the secret, right? If the service account has it, it gets the secret too. So that's basically a way around of having to put that secret in every one of your pod definitions. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to edit. See if I can find the right place to put it. Right, it's right here. Okay, so if I can get this, see if I get this right. Kube get secrets. So this secret is called regcred. Okay, so I remember that, regcred. Okay, so then I do so then I also know that I have a service account, kubectl get service account. So if I want to go to kubectl edit service account default. So this service account was already created, right? So I can't really deploy it new because it was created when my namespace was created. So I'm going to go in here and edit this, and I probably know this off the top of my head, but I'm going to be careful. Image pull secrets dash space name reg cred. So right, so I'm basically now specifying at the service account level, I'm providing the image pull secrets there, and then if I do that, and everything works fine, let's go back. If I go back now and run, instead of pod level, I'm going to go back to my SA level. And if you remember, that was just a basic pod. It had nothing special on it. It does use the private repository, right? But it doesn't provide any credentials here. So, but with the default service account in place, with the credentials there, I should be able to do helm install dev pod SA level. Now I just thought of something while I did this. I'm gonna do it right now just to prove it. I've already probably cached that image, and this may have worked for the wrong reason. It may have worked because it was pulling from the cache, right? So this is probably up and running already, right? Let's do this. Let's change. I'm gonna change this actually on the fly here. Say helm uninstall dev. Okay, what I want to do is I want to go to the code. I'm going to go into the SA level. I'm going to change so it's always pulling the image, right? So here, I want to change this so that instead of the default behavior is use a cached one if it's available. Now, to be honest, off the top of my head, I don't remember this. So I'm going to pause the video for a second, find the docs, show you the docs, and we'll fix this to always pull images. Okay, so in the documentation on images, it talks about the default policy for pulling images is if not present, which means it'll use a cache version. And the way you change this is, looks like you do this at the container level. Set the image pull policy of the container to always. So always is capital always. So if I get this right, which I will be happy to see if I get this right. Always. Okay, so this now should try to always pull it. When I try to deploy this now, this should be trying to deploy basically I'll have to pull this image from Docker Hub, and then it has to use the secret that's in the default service account. And let's see if this actually works. Okay, that's in my SA level. So if I do helm unless I don't think I have it there. No. Okay, so do helm install dev sa level, and let's see if this works. It ran awfully fast. Let me see, kube cuddle describe pod sample dev. Is it in here? I guess I have to get it. I hate troubleshooting on live here. Get pod. So look at the pod definition, container definition. It does have image pull possibly always. Well, I told it to pull it, and it did work. It's just not clear to me. Trying to think. Well, anyway, this should have. I mean, I was the reason I'm bothered is it seemed like it pulled that image super fast, and I'm trying to think of why it was that fast. The first time it took a lot longer to pull it, but either way, I did set it to always. This should be working because I have set my secret on the default service account. Okay, I am going to check this separately by manually breaking it and making sure it's still not pulling from the cache. But unless you see an addendum, it should be working as advertised. Okay, and I think that is everything I wanted to cover. Well, where's my docs here? Here we are. Yep, that's it. Thank you.